And we are live and back once again this Friday, August 14th. It's another episode of the Spin Cycle. Andrew Southwick, R.C. Williams, and Julian Armand with you on today's program. And friends, I got to tell you, I've been lamenting, before we get into the news, I just got to let off a little bit of steam here. I've been lamenting my beloved Seattle Mariners. They are not living up to their expectations this year. Everybody had them picked for the World Series. It doesn't look like it. But last night in the Bronx, we finally own the Yankees, and I know I mentioned it on when we were off air doing the Sunday show. But man, a satisfying 1-0 victory over the Bronx Bombers. Man alive! Nothing could make me prouder than that. And we head to Houston now to face the Astros, and I'm not worried at all.
Complete and utter destruction of the Yankees.
Yeah,
Andrew,
exactly.
Congratulations. And as
Thank
they
you.
said in the movie Major League, if we win 2 in a row, that's good. You know what happens when we win 3 in a row? That's a streak.
Yeah, well,
you're on your way, my friend.
This season, 1 in a row is a streak for the Mariners, and I'm just proud about that. And I will say it's like when your kids do what you're just proud. It doesn't matter. They're terrible finger painters, but they made a finger painting, and that's going on the fridge. And
they made a poopy.
This one's going on the fridge. I'm so excited. All right. Enough of that nonsense. All right, let's get to the yucky here. Here's an interesting story. This is President Trump running a pay-for-play side hustle with Truth Social. I have a couple of graphics here. Now, I will say this. Actually, let me bring up some notes before I get too far in here. Oh my goodness.
Somebody's going to make sure they're not going to get in trouble, right?
Well, we do, because look, they're as you have said many times, it's legal. It may not be ethical, it might not be moral, but it's legal. I think we're capitalists here. We have no problem with True Social if they're going to sell an API, but the problem becomes when the commodity being monetized may effectively be information that is generated by the president. Should we be selling access to presidential information? Should we be selling access to potentially national information? And when you look, I'm going to put this on the screen here. Let me make sure this goes up correctly. Oh, that's a little bit big, isn't it? There you go. Here's some Trump True Social posts and stock market moves. Now, this is not saying that there is a direct causation between the two, but what is set up here is President Trump has a $60,000 to $100,000 a month membership, and those who pay that money get his social posts a little bit early. Okay. And let me bring up a second graphic here. I'll show you what that is. Here you can see the breakdown there. What are some constitutional concerns? What are some conservative concerns? But this really is a commercially sold speed advantage to potentially market-moving presidential information. And that's where the problem is. Not only is it a conflict of interest in a variety of ways, or at least potentially, but again, are people getting information a little bit ahead of time? And as you know, in the stock market world, a millisecond matters. In just enough time that they can perhaps make a stock market wager, place some stock market, make buy or sell, because they know what the market's going to do. Let me put this other graphic back up on the screen here. And here you can see a breakdown and even a timeline of some of these moves. Let me bring back up to where am I looking for here? There's actually a lawsuit filed on August 12th. The Intercept and Freedom of the Press Foundation sued President Trump and members of his White House staff and entities in federal court. The plaintiffs allege violations of the First and Fifth Amendments, arguing that official presidential information cannot constitutionally be distributed preferentially according to who pays the president's privately held company. Now, these are allegations, of course. No court has yet ruled that Truth API is unconstitutional, corrupt, or that there is any insider trading or is otherwise illegal. Here again. And I want to make sure that is an explicit distinction right here on the air. Trump media disputes the accusation. Its CEO says that licensed real-time APIs for publicly available data are an ordinary commercial practice, and they argue that customers merely receive already public posts slightly faster. Now, the issue becomes a little bit more complicated because Trump retains a very large economic interest in Trump media. Reuters reports that his interest is at approximately 41.3% of the company. The lawsuit puts it at 41.43%, held through the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust, of which Trump is the beneficiary. So this isn't analogous to Trump choosing to post first on X and then Facebook or another unrelated platform. The arguments the critics are making is basically this. The president produces information through exercise of his public office, publishes that information through a company in which he has massive financial interest, and then that company sells faster access to that information to sophisticated investors. And that's what makes it weird.
Wow.
Because as you can see on the chart, excuse me, as you can see on the chart, his the market correlations make it weird, for lack of a better word. And the biggest one is one where he went out. Let me find it here in my notes. I'm sorry, I'm not in my studio, so I'm doing stuff a little bit guerrilla here. Where did that go? I'm looking for it here. Let's see. I'm not going to find it, am I? Of course not. Okay. Well, where he talked about how, hey, today is the day to buy, and you can see that's one of the ones that lists on the table. Well, if you're encouraging people to buy a stock, and they have paid a membership to get that information early, and you know that either you know the market's going to move, or you know that your influence will make the market move, it does get murky, doesn't it?
It sounds like pay for play for me, does it not?
I mean, this is this is why historically offices like the president's don't weigh in or don't speak, or there's a very clear separation between them and their assets for this very reason, right? Because they move markets. Now, a private citizen who is successful in business, Carl Icahn is famous for this, or Warren Buffett, they can move markets, and those things happen, that said, they also tend to be careful at times with what they say and do because they understand that it will move the market. Andrew, like you said at the top, I mean, it's legal, but potentially, but is it moral, right? Or is it ethical? And it does get murky because what's happening here, and you shouldn't be doing or saying those things, right? You need to be an honest dealer because you represent the totality of the American people in the role of executive. You basically, you can't play favorites, right? Not like that.
And what is it saying to the average American, right? You're saying, if you really want to understand what's happening, how to make money, you have to give me so much money for you to learn how to make extra money. We're going to give you a leg up. What does it say to the average person who can't afford something like that? That other people are going to get this advantage, or we're not going to get an advantage, so you're going to use money so that you're going to keep me down because you're giving other people an opportunity? I mean, not only is that a bad look, but we can now see behind the curtain about how they're keeping everything in the family. Like, everything's in the family. It has nothing to do with the rest of the people. It's only if you're in the know and you've got money to be able to pay for being in the know.
Well, we can certainly do away with the mythical farce that it is a selfless and altruistic act for President Trump not to take his $400,000 salary, when last year he made $2.2 billion, mostly off of the crypto scam, and then he's also making $400,000, $500,000 a month for giving early access to his post. So we can dispense with the whole he's a pauper, he's doing it for the people. But again, now there's an unusual piece of circumstantial evidence that Wall Street itself regards these posts as economically valuable. Trump Media introduced Truth API, selling financial firms rapid access to high-profile Truth Social posts, including President Trump. So there's more posts than just President Trump's that they get access to. Mm-hmm. Reportedly for between $60,000 and $100,000 per month. The bargain, $60,000 a month, comes with a longer term, a longer contract. Reuters reported that the president frequently makes market-sensitive policy announcements through Truth Social. And the arrangement is now the subject of litigation and scrutiny, which I explained before. Now, this doesn't prove manipulation, but it demonstrates something I think economically important, that professional traders apparently believe that receiving Trump's posts even marginally faster than everyone else has monetary value. Because again, the people who would spend $100,000 a month or $60,000 a month, they're not donating to a charity other than the
Right.
charity of Donald J. Trump. They're doing that to make some money. So there's, and again, we're not going to have I don't think we'll ever know the connection, but one of the concerns that I have here is the precedent that we continue to set, giving more and more power, more and more opportunity, more and more wiggle room and cover to the executive branch for that position and that executive branch to get away with whatever they want and to do whatever they want and to move unilaterally without Congress whenever and however they want, to, whether it's from imposing tariffs, whether it's to getting us into wars, or whether it's to selling information that may or may not be inside, that may or may not manipulate the market, that may or may not, may or may not, right? And again, and all the pardons. And we know also from reports out of DC that one of the reasons why President Trump honored former President Biden's pardon, particularly on Fauci and others, is because there are pardons that President Trump wants the next Democrat administration to honor that he's going to do. They're actually preparing some pardons right now for him and his family that have to do with finances. They made a deal with the IRS. They won't have to submit their tax returns, things of that nature. But we're seeing now all of this. Hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. I'll let your guys get away with this. You let my guys get away with that. I'm going to sell this access to information over here. In the meantime, I'm going to go and do this thing overseas because I'm bored or whatever it is. And, it just seems the precedence and then allowing these things to go on without any kind of raising of the eyebrow. And you would wonder where the Republicans are on this, other than I guess they're afraid of Trump because Trump owns the Republicans. But you would wonder, because if President Biden were doing this, and when Hunter Biden was selling access to Joe Biden, they were all over that. And that was a big campaign point, and and the Hunter Biden laptop and all this. And all that was real. That's true. President Biden's absolutely corrupt. But are we not seeing? And the problem is because we don't have all the correlation. We don't have every single bridge connected here. But you can certainly see the correlation between what Trump says and what the market does. And if people are buying access to that, they're not buying access to that because they don't want to make money.
I just find the fact that the American people can rise up and yell wrong when the opposite person is in the office of president. And then when our guy does it, it's okay. I don't understand what do you mean it's okay? Or we're going to, take a blind eye to the fact of what we're seeing happening here. Because everything that we're talking about hurts the American people, hurts our economy, hurts what we can do, hurts us being able to, climb the ladder. I mean, talk about, stacking the deck against us, and we the people just fall for it, especially the Republicans. I mean, I just feel that we're so gullible that we sit back and we're like, we're okay with what Trump is doing because it's Trump, but we weren't okay with what Biden was doing. Oh, and we can foresee the future, Trump is going to say it's okay, and we're going to say it's all right for the auto pen for Biden, because when the next Democrats get in, they're going to say it's okay that Trump did the same thing and was protecting the fannies of his own family.
Yeah. Andrew, so hard questions to answer, I guess, too, would be, are Poly Market and Kalshi not enough for the inside information that already leaks through DC and his endless prop bets? Trump, in this instance, it feels like he's like, no, I want to control the primary methods of distribution, and I want to create my own version of this for larger numbers, so that we eat at the trough first. Andrew, we talked about this off the air, and I think it bears repeating on the air. When things like this happen, don't think that people who have mastered these things aren't watching. And so do you get lulled? By this, I mean President Trump and whoever's doing the Truth Social API. getting this information out, do you get lulled into a false sense of security that everything's so good that you can do whatever you want? And you miss the fact that some sophisticated traders who specialize in shorting or betting on something to go down take the information, wait for the right time, and then present massive shorts to the market on critical infrastructure needs, for example, or something else crucial to the US economy, and it tanks a whole bunch of stuff at the same time.
And as we wrap this conversation, we'll move to the next story here. But I do want to make distinct some of these claims, because again, I do want to be careful. I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but we are going to point out when some stuff kind of smells funny.
The obvious.
See what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Claim number one is that Trump's Truth Social posts sometimes coincide with major stock market moves. That is clearly true.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that Trump is making them move. That doesn't mean manipulation, but they sometimes coincide with that. Claim number two is that certain Trump posts contribute to those movements because they contain new policy information. And there is strong evidence to support that, particularly tariff announcements and reversals. And again, I will put the moves back on the screen and the timelines and the dates. You can see it all there. It's all sourced. You can go look for that. And that's why I'm leaving all this on the screen. Check my work. It's all right there. Contemporaneous market reporting repeatedly describes prices changing immediately after the posts. Okay. So that's all documented because it's all recorded. We can see it. It's available.
Mm-hmm.
And claim number three, Trump deliberately posts things in order to move the market, or he associates trade beforehand, or he or associates, trade beforehand and profit from those moves. Now that does not follow the available evidence. We don't have evidence for that kind of claim. And I bring that up because some are going to make that claim and some have made that claim. And objectively, that is not something we can support. The April 9th that's on the screen there, a great time to buy episode, that does raise legitimate questions worth investigating, but timing and profitability are not proof of manipulation by themselves. They're not proof of insider trading or intent. But the larger pattern is this: markets appear substantially more sensitive to a Trump post when it conveys an actionable policy and an actionable policy change than when it consists of merely rhetoric. Okay? By 2026, analysts were even reporting that traders had become more desensitized to routine presidential social media commentary and were concentrating more heavily on actual policy implications or policy-related posts. That's what can be done. And once again, President Trump has an API set up that he benefits from to about 43%. That costs people anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 for early access to this information. It's worth investigating. This is all the information that can be proven and the information that isn't proven. We can't draw a conclusion because we don't have every fact yet, but this is enough to keep sniffing around, and we certainly will. All right, next story. And this one, RC and Juliana, you brought to the table here. I'll put this on the... Oh, I got to take this off first. Sorry about that. Here's the next one. All right. Surrogacy battle unfolding in Dallas takes a new turn. Now, RC, I'm going to have you set the stage on this story, this latest report from 5 NBC DFW in Texas. But we, on the Sunday show, which is coming up Sunday, a couple of days from now, and this week, we've talked about the issue, the plague of abortion. And this kind of dovetails into that. Briefly, and if I get this right, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you have a couple in Dallas. They wanted to have a child. They via surrogate. The child was going to be born with a heart defect. Allegations are that the couple wanted the surrogate to abort the child. The surrogate mother did not abort the child, and now there's a custody battle because there's the issue of if you physically gave birth and physically gestated the child, so are you then the mother? Well, the law actually in Texas already says that the biological parents are, in fact, the couple that allegedly wanted to terminate the child. Right now, the child is in the custody of the biological parents, but the lawsuit and custody battle is ongoing. Take us from there.
Yeah, so Andrew, this story focuses on a couple in California who hired a surrogate who happens to be a nurse in the state of Alaska to act as a surrogate because they wanted to have a baby. So this happens. She's moving along in the pregnancy. Then she gets word that the baby's going to be born with an issue, a left heart issue, which causes all types of things. And so the story goes that the couple then said, well, we're going to trigger the abortion clause in our surrogate agreement because the child is going to be impaired. The nurse says, well, no, I'm not going to do that. And then she goes to Texas because in Texas, abortion is illegal, right? So she goes to a state where she's safe and she says, hey, I've got an issue here. So Ken Paxton, the current attorney general and candidate for Senate on the Republican side, steps in and says, well, wait a minute, she's protected here. And so is the baby. So you're not gonna be able to do anything. So you fast forward, the baby is born. The surgery is getting done or treatment is being taken care of. And now the parents are saying, well, look, that's our kid. And we never said that we wanted her to have an abortion. Now, some of that's going to get fleshed out, Andrew, but very interesting. Now we see with the reversal of Roe versus Wade and the decisions going back to the states, the stories that we keep hearing are about companies who will sponsor their employees to go to states where abortion is legal, kind of like what happened in Massachusetts this week. They'll pay for their travel, they'll pay for the healthcare, they'll pay for the procedure. So we see it going one way, but now we have a case where someone decided to go to a state where abortion is illegal to protect the child, and now says, well, wait a minute. No, I don't want to do that. And I had this baby. And if you're going to try and kill it, basically, I want custody and I'm going to fight for custody. And part of what was said in Texas is that our understanding is the biological parent or mother is the one that gives birth. That's an interesting one and an interesting interpretation in Texas coming out of Ken Paxton's office to see what's going to happen here. But that's the story. And it's interesting, Andrew, we now see an instance of the reverse where someone goes to a state to save a baby versus going for, I guess, what you would call leisure travel abortions to states and then having companies subsidize the travel and the procedure and the time and everything else.
Do you think that a case like this could create, again, another kind of entangled precedent when it comes to surrogacy, when the surrogate mother does not want to abort the child, but the biological parents do? I mean, will this affect other cases in the future, do you think?
I would assume that it is going to affect other cases. What I would love to see is in 20 years from now, when this child grows up, right, what this child thinks about the fact that his biological parents wanted to abort him, but this woman who was actually carrying him, giving him life, was like, no, I'm going to protect you. Like, what does that do to your identity? Right? When you hear that the people that, your biological parents wanted you to be aborted because you had a slight issue, and now you're going to say there's an abortion clause. So other people are now going to say, well, that child has an issue. So we're just going to abort it. And we're just going to look at the child as a commodity, not like a real life.
Well, actually, I'll say I can speak to that because there were people that wanted me aborted when I was in the womb. And needless to say, I was a unplanned surprise. We'll put it that way. And people that wanted me aborted, and I think at least in my experience, you don't really look at or I didn't really look at they wanted me aborted or whatever. It's more you have the strength of those who didn't. Obviously, my mom obviously didn't abort me. It's okay. I'm here, and. But then, those that wanted to abort me changed their mind almost immediately once they saw me. And so I think there's an opportunity for redemption, but that redemption is only going to come if we allow life to occur and we don't stop it because we're worried. And I do think, though, one of the evidence of the depravity of man that we have is just, this child is not factory perfect. This child is defective. So let's kill it. The only solution is to kill it. And it is interesting if you look at this, look at the issues that ail the world, or that we say ail the world today, whether it's hunger, whether it's poverty, whether it's climate change. Every one of them, what's the problem? Human beings. Every one of them, they'll say there's too many human beings. There's always too much of us and just enough of them, right? But the solution is always we need less people. We need fewer people. The solution, we come up with the solution of death, end it all. And that's such a stark difference to what Christ and his salvation offers, which is life, and to preserve and promote life and be fruitful and multiply. And we forget that the book of Colossians tells us that Jesus created everything and he sustains everything, which means he keeps it going, which means no matter how much, even if we were to pollute the world to the nth degree, if he wants the world to exist, it will maintain. We can't thwart or overpower God and his plan and his design. That doesn't mean that we abuse it. We certainly do. That's what sin is. But we forget that he's the one sustaining it. I mean, I know I'm kind of getting off topic here, but even think of something like gravity. How has gravity remained constant from the beginning to now? Exactly constant. How has the mixture of air, the air that we breathe, and the chemical compounds of that remained exactly the same, no matter what? Now I support a young Earth theory. I think the Earth is maybe 6,000, 7,000 years old, somewhere in there. I don't buy millions of years. I don't believe any version of evolution. But for the sake of argument, let's say there's millions of years. Well, then that means gravity and all that stuff still stayed constant the entire time, and still made inhabitable for life. So we forget so often, or reject. But we live in a world that's a culture of death, that the answer to everything is death. Abort your child, abort this, abort that, less human beings. And the message of Christ and his gospel is just the opposite, is life and redemption. And so I guess bringing that back to where I started, when those who wanted me aborted, when my mom was pregnant with me, pressured my mom right up to the day I was born. And my mom had a couple of friends that were in her corner at that time. But again, the hearts changed because life was preserved, life was spared. And actually, and I'm going to tell you this story while I'm here. This is another one. I had a couple of friends in a church where I was a music pastor. This was some years ago. And they were pregnant with a baby girl. They had a son. And they're pregnant with the baby girl. The baby girl they found in the womb that she had a disease that she was not going to live much past birth. So the OBGYN said, you need to abort the child. It's the best. Don't bring the child to full term. Don't, it's going to be too painful for you. The doctor even tried to split up the husband and wife. And take the husband aside and say, convince your wife to abort the child, and to the wife, let your husband know, because they're both Christians, and the husband in fact had his son with him in the meeting where the doctor was trying to say abort your baby daughter, and the husband said, look at my son here. I think he was 2 or 3 years old at the time. He said, you're asking me to abort his sister, who could be sitting right here in a couple of years. We don't know what God's going to do. Well, anyway. All this pressure. They don't abort the baby. It's a baby girl. They have the baby girl. And she lived 19 minutes. Mom and dad got to hold her. And 19 minutes after they gave birth, the baby died. God called the baby home. Now, what happened after that is stunning. The OBGYN was so moved and so just overwhelmed with the testimony of obeying God in their lives and allowing God to be the one who writes the story of our lives from its beginning to end, at least on earth. She ended up reversing her position entirely. She now speaks nationally on life and on giving birth and on bringing babies to term and not being afraid of maladies in the womb, so on and so forth. Completely flipped. There were, I want to say 2, but maybe 3 other mothers who were in that hospital that day for an abortion, who had heard from the charge nurses the story of this couple and their daughter. And all of those mothers then chose to have their baby instead. And the 19 minutes that mom and dad got with the baby, they said, yeah, it was heartbreaking. I mean, tears for days. It's still painful now because your child dies. That you there's nothing that fixes that, But they still say they wouldn't have traded that for anything, and it made an impression upon me because we look at the value of life as to what that life can produce for whatever end we think it is. For the globalists and transhumanists, it's, the what can you do for our technological infrastructure, that kind of thing. And what would a 19-minute-old life be able to accomplish like that? Nothing, really. Nothing of value. No, didn't pay taxes, didn't do anything that our rulers would like us to do as useless eaters, right? But God accomplished more through that little baby girl's life in 19 minutes than I would say our politicians have accomplished in 80 years of being in DC. And it's because they chose to honor God and preserve life and stand for life and allow God to finish those sentences. We don't do that in our culture. Our answer is always death to everything. Think about that. Injections that we take that are supposed to prevent us from getting diseases, what those injections do is they kill our immune system. We now have weight loss drugs. If you've seen Ozempic and Wegovy, I know I'm monologuing here, I'm sorry, but bear with me. The Ozempic and Wegovy, Ozempic specifically is now have lawsuits, I think, to the tune of $4 billion because it's just been discovered much more serious side effects than what you see on television. In fact, kidney failure and a condition colloquially called stomach rot, which is where they eat food, the food doesn't digest, endless vomiting, and they can no longer digest food in their stomach. So shut off your organs, do that, get on a ventilator, get on this drug or that drug, make you a formaldehyde preserved zombie, just alive enough that you can still work and pay your health insurance, but just sick enough that you always need the medication and you always need the treatment and you're a forever customer. None of that has to do with living a life abundantly. It's all a culture of death. And then of course we just talked about the new abortion law in Massachusetts and killing babies up to the point of birth, and we see, of course, with the Faucis of the world and everything else. But every now and then there are stories like that couple and that chose life, that protected life, that celebrated life, even when it came at a cost, and it made a bigger difference than anything we could ever do. So, all right, sorry, I didn't mean to say all that stuff, but you guys should probably talk for a minute and then we should get out of here, huh?
Andrew, these messages are so important. These testimonies are so important. Juliana gave hers for the show this Sunday about grandson who's now 21 and was born 4 pounds, born premature, choosing life and what that means. You shared your story. There were also people who encouraged my mom to get an abortion when I came around. And so hearing these stories and hearing these testimonies is so important for people because you never know. It may be you that hears it, but it may be you that hears it and shares it with someone who needs to hear it, which is why we do this, which is why monologuing is okay, which is why being righteously angry about things is okay, which is why expressing them is okay, because it's for us, for our sanity, but it's also for the people who need to hear it, because that's how Father works.
Well, people need to understand that they're not alone in how they're feeling. But I just want to say this. Father has a reason why he brings life. He's not about death. He's about life. And if he's bringing somebody here right through birth, it's because there's a reason for it. So even 19 minutes, she saved, because of that situation, saved 4 other babies from being aborted. The stories that will come from it. I mean, that was significant. Father had a reason for that baby to be born. He doesn't make mistakes. No baby that is in vitro is a mistake. There's a reason why Father is bringing forth that child, because we all have gifts and talents that Father needs us here to do what it is that we're called to do. So he specifically is bringing people to earth to do things. So when we kill that person, we have no idea how we're interrupting God's, plan and what it is that he needs to have done and how that person impacted his future plans. It's not our right to take away that opportunity for that life to do what it was called to do.
Yeah, amen. And that's, again, what we want to do on this program is we believe that every life has value, whether you agree
That's right.
with our worldview or political positions or not, whether you share faith in Jesus or not, you still have value. You were still created by God.
That's right.
You may not be a child of God, but you were created by God, and so we care for your soul. We care for you. That's why we want to bring you the actual truth. That's why we're willing to talk about the left and the right with equal offense opportunity, right?
Mhm.
And I see a comment here from Greg. I don't know if it's a bot or not. Greg, if you're real, thanks for checking us out. Talking about, hey, the left, and it's like the left doesn't spin way more than the right. Well, the left does spin, but so does the right. It's political. It's all one. They all do it all the time. Anything that's coming out of their mouth, if it's coming from DC, it's spin. What we try to do here is get through that spin, straighten it out, and give you the facts the way they are. And you can do with them what you will. All right, RC, let people know where they can find us.
Yeah, so all things Watchman Action you can find at watchmanaction.org. All of our social media is pretty simple, Watchman Action. You can also watch the Spin Cycle weeknights at 9:30 Eastern on the Watchman Action Network. That's channel 40 on Bet Cable in North Dakota, and streaming at watchmanaction.org on YouTube, on Rumble, and all the other cool places. And if you'd like to find Andrew Southwick, you can do so on YouTube at Culture Crossroads 316. You'll find the Spin Cycle, also the Culture Crossroads, and his incredible monologues, which Juliana and I continuously encourage him to do, and you should do the same. Culture Crossroads 316.
All right. For RC and Juliana, I am Andrew Southwick. Thank you for being with us, either for a minute or for the whole thing, or if you're watching on demand later on. We'll be back next week. Have a great weekend, and talk to you later.